For this month's tailoring of the month, we're going to be going over how to create a handheld view. Now, this is a relatively simple tailoring once you actually get into the details of how to create a view on the handheld, but it can be a cause for confusion at times because setting up a view is much different than setting up a regular form in Form Studio. So the layout is a little bit different in there, and we're going to cover the ins and outs of creating a view today. So first, I'm going to go ahead and open up Form Studio here. Now, from within Form Studio, I'm going to go into my Tailoring of the Month project. As I always mention to you, make sure you're creating this in a custom project. That way it will not be overridden whenever you run a WiSys update. All right, my Tailoring of the Month project. And now instead of add a form, I'm going to start by clicking on add a view. So again, this is slightly different now. Usually when you add a form, the layout's going to be a little bit different here as compared to what a view is going to look like. All right, so now I'm inside my add a view. So you'll see here that even though I'm in a view, it still says form. I'm going to go ahead and rename my form here to, I'm going to make a shipment view. Now, out of the box, WiSys offers, most of the views that you can think of: item views, bin, batch, pallets, serial and lot numbers on pallets. Any of the views that you can really think of that are obvious for a WMS, WiSys already has out of the box. But that said, there's a lot of times where a customer has a specific piece of information that's important to them. They could want a view that shows shipments. That's what I'm going to create today. They could have a UDF that's very important to them that they want to create a view for, so on and so forth. There's a lot of different types of views that you can create. Production companies sometimes want a BOM view, things like that, right? But for today, I'm going to make a shipment view. So I'm going to name it as such. Add a space in there. All right, now the first thing when you're adding a view that can be a cause of confusion is you'll notice that I can't click on this. This is not an item, so it's not going to come up here and be called a grid and allow me to edit that grid as an item, right? This is a view, so it's different. This is not a grid on the form. So, if I add a text field, now I have an item there, but again, still can't click on this. So you'll want to remember that if you're doing a view up here on the form level, you're going to edit the view SQL. So that is what controls this grid. In this case, since you're doing a view, it is not a regular grid like you could add to a form. You need to actually edit the view SQL to adjust what that grid's going to show. But before we even get to that point, we'll go from the top down here. So I'm just going to make a really simple shipment view. I want to be able to scan in a shipment. I have, let's say I have large labels on my pallets that have the shipment number barcoded on them. I want to be able to scan that shipment number and then have a view on the handheld populate showing me all of the various packages. What's the package, what's in the package, and how many of the item are in the package for every package on said view or on said shipment here. So now I have a text field there. I'm going to add a second one as well. So first I'm going to have a lookup actually. That's going to be for my shipment number. Again, typically my company's process is going to be scanning. We have a big barcode for it, but sometimes they might want to look it up. So I want to have the availability of that lookup there. Then I'm going to have a regular text field that's not going to be enabled, and I'm actually going to have that populate with the ship to name, so the actual customer that we're shipping to. So I'm going to go ahead and name these. And if you haven't had an enablement class with me before, we always name our text fields TXT. That way in the XML, we know what the actual field is. So I name that TXT shipment. And I gave it the caption of shipment, and this is going to be my ship to, so I'll name it like TXT. I'm actually going to name it TXT cust for customer. Oh. But typically the customer name could be a little bit different from the ship to address name, so I'm going to actually call that ship to there. Now we have the layout there of what we want these fields to look like. Now Per usual as well, I'm showing you how to tailor something in WiSys, so this isn't going to be a SQL writing class. I already have my queries that I'm using today. I wrote them beforehand here, so they're ready to go, and I'm going to just copy and paste them in. So first, I'm going to go ahead and set up this lookup here, just like I would on a regular form. Again, the only thing that's different is editing that grid part of the view, and we'll get there shortly. So first, I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to set up my lookup. It's going to be pretty simple. All right, so I'm going to look at our WiSys WSPKG shipment table. That's where we house all the shipment information. And I'm going to just bring in the shipment number and that ship to name so you can see where the shipment is going. And I'm only going to do it for statuses that haven't shipped yet. So this is one that I want my employees to use on the actual warehouse floor when they walk over to the dock. I want them to be able to go and scan a package and see the full layout of what the shipment looks like that package is on. I don't want them to be in here looking up, shipments that have since shipped out of the warehouse, not for this specific application. So there's my SQL there. I'm going to add shipment number as the return field. So when they use the lookup here, the shipment number will populate. So let's just take a look at that first. So nothing will go on here. We didn't do this yet, and we didn't do this yet. But if I go and look up a shipment and select one, passes my shipment number back again, just like a regular form. I also have the ability to scan or type into there. So same thing, just like a regular form. Pretty simple so far. Now I'm going to add a little validation on there too to set this ship to field. So, of course, for whatever the customer wants to build a view for, they might want a variety of information that's more on the header than the lines. So, in this case, because I'm looking at the packages and the items in the packages, this is kind of line data for the shipment. What's in the grid is going to be more like line data. So up here, I wanted a little extra header information. Maybe in addition to the ship to, you might want the ship via code or the pro number, the BOL number, the created date, who created it, right? You could have any information you want populating up here through a validation, and that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to go to my actions on my shipment column, on my shipment field, and I'm going to go to a SQL event. And again, I'm just going to drop in a pretty simple SQL statement here that I prepared earlier. So again, I'm just going to look at my WSPKG shipment table. And I'm basically going to take that ship to name as my text cust field for, the ship to name on the actual form. It's going to automatically populate based on the shipment number that was entered before. So I'm going to save that here. Pretty simple. It looks at the shipment number that I entered either by scanning or selecting from the lookup or typing it in. And then it looks at, okay, what's the ship to name for that shipment number, and it assigns it to that text field. This is pretty standard, something we do in a lot of our forms. So now again, if I go ahead and select a shipment number here, let's do that 284 again. Now you see no SQL defined because all the fields are filled in here. What should be happening is the view should be updated, but we didn't define the SQL for the actual view yet, so that's why we got that error message. But what we have set up has populated correctly. We now have our shipment number and the customer it's going to, or the ship to name for the customer it's going to, populating there above the actual grid on the view. So now the top part is set up. All that header information that I wanted to include here is set. Again, you could create a view for really anything. Let's say this was a BOM, at the top of the screen, I could have the parent item. I could have the unit of measure of the parent item, all kinds of information right at the top, and then the actual lines to the BOM at the bottom. Or in this case, again, instead of the ship to name, you have pro number, BOL number, trucking company, all kinds of other shipment related information that you could populate there at the top of the screen. But now I'm going to go ahead and actually take care of the view. So again, this was the big thing I wanted to harp on today. When you create a view instead of a form, you will see that you have to edit the actual grid up here with that view SQL. So just to compare that real quick, if I go here and I add a form and I put a grid on here, you see that looks the same way as a view looks, but there's no view SQL up here to edit. I would actually be editing an item called a grid and setting up the SQL for the grid. So that's the key difference that I wanted to talk about, because if we go back to our shipment view, again, you notice I can't click this. This isn't an item that will show up here. I have to edit it on the form level. I just want to harp on that because that's where all the confusion comes from when you're creating a form in here, but it's pretty easy once you know where to look. So now I'm going to go to my view SQL. And same way as if I were making a form on the handheld that has a grid on it, I'm going to just basically treat this the exact same way. So I'm going to put in a select statement here for what I want to show up in that grid. And it's just going to be pretty simple here. So I'm going to look at the package number of every package that is on this shipment. Then I'm going to look at all of the items that are in the packages on the shipment and the quantity of those items in those packages. So it is possible if I have mixed pallets or mixed cartons to have a package number show up multiple times. With the way my query is, this might not be the most perfect query in the world. Maybe if it's mixed items in a package, I want it to say mixed item. That's neither here nor there. You can work on perfecting this later, but for now, we're going to get that actual detailed information of what's on the shipment, what packages and what items are going to be shipped out with this shipment. We'll have that all populate in the grid based on, once again, the shipment number we selected above. So I'm going to save that. And typically you would want to put in error messages for these. I know it's not going to error out, so I've been kind of skipping through that. But, logically here, if we errored out, we would probably want to say something like shipment doesn't exist. It honestly should error out well before this if the shipment didn't exist, but that would be generally the reason we're getting the error. All right, shipment doesn't exist. Gonna save that. And now we should be ready to go. So again, up here in the form settings, we have our view SQL. That's what's gonna populate the grid here. So if I go ahead and simulate, I'm just gonna select my shipment once again, and not only will it populate the ship to name this time, it will also populate that entire grid with all the packages on the shipment. So here in this case, populate the ship to name. We see we have it's 2 lines for the same package. So again, my query is not perfect here because those are the same item. It's probably a serial or lotted item. That's probably the issue in this case why I'm getting 2 lines. But again, this isn't a SQL writing class. We could refine that query later. Really what we're concerned about is, are we getting that grid to populate below here? And we are. Again, I can look at any of these that I want to, and I'm getting my packages down there and the items and quantities that are associated with them. Now, one last thing on here that's worth talking about is, of course, this doesn't look super clean. We're looking at the actual field names here. You probably want to clean those up so that the text looks a little bit better. And that is also very simple. So I can go back into my view SQL and I can just alias those. And what's going to display in the view is going to be the alias names that I've given it. So just real simple here. I'm going to do like as package. We'll do as item, as quantity. And that should just clean up the way it looks a little bit here too, so it doesn't look as it doesn't look as raw, like it's just fields from the SQL there. So now it looks a little bit more clean. So again, this is a relatively simple thing here. You see, I really kind of went all out on this for what you want to display in a view. Again, you can have header information up here, so you can actually look up an item or scan an item, and then have some header information pull based on that item. Then you also can have your, grid below the actual view there, populate based on the item you selected. But just one more time for the road here. This is done in View SQL on the form. It is not an item in this case. Once you select to do a view instead of a form, the actual grid piece here is not an item. It is a part of the actual form itself, and you need to go up here and edit the View SQL. Thanks for watching. Again, this is a pretty common one asked about by customers. You know, any customer has a different reason for a view they want to be able to access on the handheld. It's just simple, easy information access on the handheld. You want to be able to create these applications quickly and easily for your customers. And this is the ins and outs of how to do that. It's a pretty simple process when you know the right places to look. Thank you.